So season 3 of Invincible just concluded, and I'll be honest, I was left a little conflicted. Now don't get it twisted, I still think it was solid, but I do think it was the weakest season so far. In comparison to the previous seasons, there was just a lot more flaws present. Flaws that either didn't exist or weren't as bad as they are now. Now there are plenty of things I liked about the show as well, but I'll start with the points of criticism first. Now let's get the big elephant out of the way here. The animation was noticeably worse. To me, it just felt unpolished, and in many scenes, it was very subtle, to the point where I would think a lot of viewers wouldn't catch it. And in others, it was very blatant. I mean, just look at this scene. This is straight up awful CGI, to the point where it looks like it's straight out of a bad isekai. Okay, maybe not that bad, but you catch my drift. And also, I think the animation played a huge effect on the choreography throughout this season. Now, mind you, I don't think it was terrible, but I do think it was a massive step down from what we're accustomed to. Now, besides a few exceptions like the finale, which I will get to in a second, I mean, that was so good, everyone jokes around that that's where all the budget went to, and it certainly looks so. But besides those outliers, the majority of the fights just looked very plain and basic. It just felt very bare bones, and I know a lot of people are going to say that this is mostly the side fights, that the side fights don't really matter as much. And I just disagree. Even the smaller fights in the previous seasons had really good choreography sequences that made it feel dynamic. It made it feel like it was truly a back and forth contest, as opposed to now where it feels more like a foregone conclusion and they just simplified it. My last criticism that I have is a little bit more of a nitpick, but I still think it is valid to mention, and that is the lack of an overarching plot. Now don't get it twisted, it's not like it's completely non-existent. It's there. I just wish it was a little bit more prominent. In the first season, it was Omni-Man and why he did what he did. In the second, it was the Viltrum Empire mainly, with a little bit of Angstrom Levy in there. In the third, it's a little bit of the Viltrum Empire, a little bit of Angstrom, but it's not constantly referred to in each episode. So it makes the season feel kind of aimless, as it mostly focuses on the side plots that expand upon the characters quite nicely, mind you, but it doesn't have anything to tie it back to the overarching plot that most of the viewers care about. And the few episodes that do have these smaller moments are usually the highlights of the season, the ones that the fans usually rave about, like episode 7, or the one episode where we saw Alan's perspective. And again, I want to remind you that this is mostly a nitpick, especially in comparison to my first 2 pieces of criticism. I also have a little bit of a harsh take about episode 7 and how they adapted that big event as a whole, but if you want to see that, click the link above here or the link down in the description below, as that has a lot of spoilers. Alright, with that out of the way, let me talk about the things that I liked, starting with something that I mentioned previously in this video, and that is the character development. I just love how they expanded upon pretty much every single character you can imagine for the Invincible world. My favorite in particular being Cecil. I think they did an amazing job, especially showing his past and how he was molded into the person he became, and how he was very similar to Mark, especially this version of Mark in season 3. And this all culminates to something that he says to Mark, and that is, you can either be the good guy or the guy who saves the world. You can't be both. And I think that really encapsulates Cecil's ideology in this season. This also kind of foreshadows Mark's development that he's had throughout this entire show. His moral struggle on the use of violence and how far he should go when it comes to villains. And I cannot describe to you in detail one of my favorite moments, because I don't want to spoil anyone, but towards the end of the finale, there's a decision that Mark makes, and it is so well deserved due to the immense amount of setup, the immense amount of writing that went into it. It truly feels like Mark went on this long journey with conflicted thoughts of his own ideology that he stands by, and he finally makes this decision. And it's just so good. I can't give it enough credit. So to wrap up this review, let me talk about my favorite part, and that is the final episode. In short, it's just fucking amazing. It had pretty much everything that I wanted in Season 3. Amazing animation, for the standard of Invincible, mind you. Amazing choreography that expands well past the comics. Great character development to set up the fight prior. It just had it all. Ultimately, is Season 3 of Invincible good? Is it worth watching? Yes. I think it has problems. I think it has flaws with its animation, with much of its choreography for most of the side fights, not the big ones, of course. I think it could have done much better with tying the side plots back to the overarching plot like they've done in previous seasons, but the immense amount of character development for pretty much everyone, but especially Mark, definitely makes the season worth watching. Again, seeing Mark go through this journey, having a moral struggle with his own ideology and the use of violence, is amazing. I just love it. Also, the complete badass fight in episode 8 on its own makes it worth watching an entire season for. But yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Comment below how you felt about Invincible Season 3 and what I should do next. I could do anime, shows, movies, games, whatever. But again, thank you so much for watching.